It's time for a book haul and a book review. The book I just finished is Behind the Horror: True Stories That Inspired Horror Movies by Lee Mellor. And it it covers a whole lot of horror movies and then the general history of the story of what kind of inspired them, either multiple things or just one particular crime. I did appreciate it was very interesting, and it was also very even-handed, particularly about the supernatural stuff that it was dealing with, because a lot of these stories, particularly the ones with the Warrens, have been debunked since they were kind of fame hounds for a lot of things and liked to really push forward narratives that were either exploitative or very wrong. And this book really focuses in on some of the stuff that, if it was supernatural and they felt that there was a reason that it was actually happening, they would go into detail about that, much like Amityville and some of the other different stories that we know don't really have the salacious stories behind them that the narrative would like to put forward. So this was a very, very good book, very readable, and covered a lot of true crime as well in it. So I felt this one was appropriate during Horror Mayhem to read a nonfiction. But this one ended up being very, very good, and I would recommend it if you're interested in horror movies and history, or horror movies and true crime, because it covers both of those topics. The second thing is I have another book haul, which I did earlier in the week, but then didn't film it at any point in time because I was busy this week. So went to Goodwill again, got some more true crime. We have some classic true crime in Truman Capote's True Blood, which I've never, or In Cold Blood, sorry, which I've never read, just because I have some, I'm not sure, because I know some of the history behind this, and I know Capote sort of became enamored in some ways with the actual murderers, and I always feel that that takes away from the victims of the crime, because the focus here, I know, is going to be very much on the murderers and not so much in the victims, and that to me always feels a little bit reprehensible. But I know Truman Capote is such a big name, and I know this book is so well written, so, well, we'll see on that one. I also, and this is a book I've started but never finished, I didn't get around to finishing, In the Garden of Good and Evil, which they made the movie of, and is sort of known because it's in Savannah and involved a rich, eccentric man and lots of kind of eccentric characters in the South, and there is a flavor of just natural Southern Gothic to all of this, and the South just is like that. And this was a good book when I started. I just never finished it. It was not really a DNF. It was just didn't get around to finishing it at any point in time, and gave the book back to the library. So I've got a copy of my own, so we'll see how this one goes as well. I've got two more. I don't know what the deal is with my Goodwill and Revolutionary War history books. Copy of George Washington's Secret Six, which was about the spy ring. I think this might have been the spy ring that they made that TV show years ago about, that had, I think, Jamie Bell in it and different things. And written out of history, this is about some of the unsung people that had to do with the Bill of Rights and were involved in coming up with different ideas that influenced the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and different things, but were not necessarily acknowledged for that at any point in time. No, somebody's left a note in here, so it must have been they were doing it for a history class. So we have that going on. And then, in the genres of pulp, I found this one, and I couldn't resist this one. Vazcor, Son of Vazcor, by Tanith Lee, of all people. Tanith Lee, I acknowledge as when I was introduced to her, she was such a big name in fantasy and things like, oh, Tam Lin, I think, was the big one that came out when she was initially when I had heard of her, and different things like that. But this is pulp to the core and has a great title. So I knew she'd written for a long time, but I did not realize she was got quite into the pulpy material that seems to have gone here. And then for June on the Range, I picked up The Appaloosa, which is a little pocket western here. It was originally 35 cents. That can go with my June on the Range reading next month. So that is my haul, and that is my book recommendation and review at this point. So we're continuing on into the horror mayhem, continuing on into Gothic Horror Week, which is alternately my favorite type of book and least favorite type of book for varying reasons. So we'll see how that one goes as well.